Hello everybody, welcome to the robot design presentation. This is the beginner one. Today I'll be talking to you about many different things about First LEGO League. I assume that most of you guys are probably new to this First LEGO League experience, so I'm going to try to cover all the basics within this presentation. We will talk about many different pieces that you are most likely to use in your robot as well as attachments, and also some strategy in how the First LEGO League tournament will work. I want to add that this beginner presentation will be split into multiple parts because I assume that it's not easy to watch a whole hour of a presentation and understand everything. So I'm going to cut it up into small bits and segments so you guys can understand it more. I also want to add that there are also other presentations like code and CAD design and also an advanced version of robot design. First, we're going to be talking to you guys about many different pieces. This Lego brick is probably the most stereotypical thing you can think about as a Lego piece. It is not really used in LEGO Technic, but I thought that I must highlight this with you guys. I don't really recommend using these in your robot because there's so many other pieces that are probably going to be more helpful. However, this piece can also be used as for attachments and walls. I'm going to talk to you about the first LEGO Technic piece. This is a beam. This is kind of like a normal Lego brick, but is more compatible with the other Lego Technic pieces. The thing is that there's so many purposes for a beam, however there aren't many for a brick. With beams, you can use it for the outside of your robot, as well as you can use it for an attachment. Because of this, beams are very important. I also want to add that beams have these circular holes inside them, which are used for other pieces, which I'll explain later. So next, these are special beams. If you noticed previously, these beams are all straight, and they don't really have an angle towards them. So sometimes it's really hard to connect these beams together. That's why there are angled beams. These angled beams are very helpful. First, I also want to show that in the angled beams, unlike a normal beam, there is a plus sign. This plus sign, rather than a normal circular hole, is for using different pegs to go through it, which I'll explain later. So, if you noticed back here and in the beams, there are these circular holes, which are meant for pegs. Pegs are kind of like the backbone of the robot. Pegs are very important. Pegs are used to connect many types of pieces, such as beams, so they can make a structure. Without pegs, the robot would crumble. If you can see on this robot, these small black and blue specks are pegs connecting the beams together. So, thankfully, LEGO has created so many different types of pegs to satisfy the need for our robot. There are so many different types of pegs, so there's always a way to connect two types of pieces. Here I have 4 of the most used pegs that are used in our robot, and I'll explain each one of them. The first one is a black peg. Black pegs are probably the main and most used peg out of any other peg there is. This peg is the standard peg that connects two circular beams, right here. Next, this is a triple blue peg. This is just like a black peg, however, it can't connect 2 beams, it can connect 3 beams. This is a hybrid. If you notice, this is the same size as a normal black peg. However, if you notice, this hybrid peg has a plus sign on one of the sides rather than a circular hole. That plus sign like I said before, can be used to connect angle beams, like in these plus lines here, rather than a normal peg. Lastly, the fourth most used piece is a red pushpin. If you notice, this red pushpin is a plus sign hole connected with a normal black peg. These are very helpful as it can use to be connecting with the robot and make a more sturdy structure. This is the same size as a triple beam peg. I have a video that I would like to share with you guys that explains the depth of pegs.
Hi, today I'm going to introduce to you these pegs. This is a black peg, this is a hybrid, this is a triple blue peg, and this is a red push pin. You can classify these types of pegs with the size of the beams. As you can see, this black peg is the size of 2 beams. So is this hybrid. But this blue peg isn't. It's the length of 3 pegs. So is this red pin. So now that you know the size of the pegs, let me show you some uses. This black peg is a normal sized peg. What it can do is it can attach or connect 2 bars. It can attach these 2 bars, but no more. But if you only add 1 peg, it's going to be really wobbly. So what you can do is that you can add another peg to make it not as wobbly. As you can see, it can't wobble as much. Now here's the hybrid peg. As you can see, on one side of it, it has a cross, and on the other side, it has a circle. Here's what it can be used for. On this particular hole, you can only put a cross through it. As to compared to the black peg, you can only put it through circles. Now here's the use. You can put the hybrid peg with the cross side into the cross piece, and then you can attach it into this. Now here is a triple blue peg. This triple blue peg is useful because it can attach or connect 3 bars together. You can see it connected these 3 bars together. Now here is the last peg I'm going to talk about. It's very useful because, as you can see, at the very end there is a plus. You can attach a hybrid to the end of this red push pin. And then, for example, you can then attach it to this and put it in like this. It really doesn't matter, but you should use this peg wisely according to your design. Thank you.
So I believe that using pegs and beams, they can already make so many different structures. However, there's so many more pieces to discuss. Next, we're going to talk about axles or shafts. If you notice back here, there was a hybrid, which had this plus or cross sign on it. This axle is just like a hybrid, but a very long version of it. There's so many different types of axles, and of many different size. Axles are like a very small and thin beam. They attach onto many different pieces and they can also make your wheels turn by getting attached onto your wheels. Axles have a special type of hole for them, which is the plus sign, just like a hybrid, where you can put the axle through and connect multiple beams. You can also put these axles through normal beam holes as well. So this, if you notice back here, when I talked to you guys about pegs, I showed you there are so many different types of pegs. However, within each different type of peg, there is a friction version and a non-friction version. The friction version, if you can notice, has these small ridges on it. So when you connect it onto the beam, there's not any friction. There's a lot of friction, my bad. And that way that the piece won't spin around. However, the non-friction version of it will spin around, as it's a very loosely typed version. The difference between these pegs is that one of them has a small bump while the other one doesn't. So that's why within each peg there are two types. Remember, only use these at your own risk, as sometimes they are more of a liability. The last slide that I'll be discussing for this part is a special axle. These are like normal axles. However, if you notice, these type of axles have a small structure at the end of them rather than a normal axle. This axle, for example, has a stopper, so that way if you put the axle through the beam, it doesn't go through. These axles are very helpful in case you need a very strong connection of your robot. So this concludes the first part of our presentation, and I hope that you've learned a lot, and please come back for the next 2 or 3 more parts. Thank you.